Luigi Mangione now moving forward in both locations, Pennsylvania and New York. We've got updates on the latest filings and what's happening because a grand jury is hearing evidence in New York, likely as we speak. But before we go to New York, let's also get tabs on what's happening in Pennsylvania. You can see this is a filing that came out courtesy of Christopher Salas on X, who's a DC correspondent, native Florida man, and more. And he's got this document here. It's an order from the court. You can see this was in response to a filing from Luigi Mangione as the defendant in the case where he is being prosecuted by Pennsylvania. Remember, he was picked up there on the gun charges at the McDonald's. And now what he's filing is a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. You can see what is also happening is he's naming here the superintendent of the correctional facility in Huntington, Pennsylvania. He's saying, Your Honor, we have a challenge. They are illegally detaining me. They have my body physically, and they don't have the authority to detain me. So he's filing two things that have happened here. And you can see the judge just gave us an order that is coming from Honorable David H. Consiglio. Says, and now, this 12th day of December, upon consideration of Luigi Mangione's petition for writ of habeas corpus, so two things, one, a petition for writ of habeas, and two, a petition for imposition of bail, a hearing is hereby scheduled on December 30th at 1 p.m., courtroom 4 at Blair County Courthouse in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. So, what's happening? Two things. The writ of habeas corpus, he's saying, Your Honor, they don't have a legal basis to continue to. Now, we don't know exactly what they'll argue at this hearing or what evidence they'll present yet, but these issues are generally jurisdictional, the wrong jurisdiction. The charges don't apply here. There's no actual violation of the law, right? The law, as they're alleging, has not been violated at all. So there's a procedural problem, a legal, facially legal issue that doesn't justify him being detained. Like, you can't just house somebody on random charges unless there's some cause to do it. So have they even shown a prima facie case that he should be in custody? Maybe not. Are there constitutional violations, or are there other reasons why the judge can say lawfully this prison cannot contain him, so they need to release him? Now, this is a pretty tough standard, right? These things are filed often and they're not regularly successful, because as long as the state has a basic showing that it is a valid charge, then they'll keep him. And so the defendant has to reverse that and show opposite. So we'll see what he presents. Now, that is usually not granted. So it's unlikely that is going to be granted in this context, so that he'll be released. In other words, the government will be ordered to release him, and the jailer, the prison, will say, you're free. Now, the other issue that we hear a lot, and there are a lot of debates about this. In fact, Diddy's been debating this, which is to try to get bail, to say, okay, look, maybe there's enough there from the government to sustain the charges so that they do have some lawful basis to hold you in detention. But if they do hold you in detention, and they have the right to do that, there's a different set of concepts that says that you are still presumed innocent throughout the process. And so that the government should impose the least restrictive means or mechanisms to make sure that you come back to court, and so that you are not a danger to the community. And then that's where we consider bail, because we should theoretically, if you're presumed innocent in this country, and if the government is making a lawful showing, we should still let you out because you're presumed innocent. So the court will then say, okay, can we let him out? Can we put him on home detention? Can we suspend his passport? Can we make sure he goes in and calls somebody every night at so-and-so time and so on? Is he going to have, like Diddy was offering, private security to make sure he doesn't leave, or he'll give up the use of his cell phone, right? You'll hear the defense then negotiate the terms of release. So they'll say, okay, you can keep him, but how about we negotiate the terms of the release? And the judge will try to come to a conclusion that should, according to the law, be the least restrictive mechanism, just to make sure that Luigi comes back or Diddy comes back. Now, Diddy, they didn't let him out. And in murder cases, they generally are not letting you out. But in Pennsylvania, it's not a murder case, right? In Pennsylvania, it's a gun charge The murder charge is going to come back over from New York. And so we'll see them saying this guy's got no criminal record and he's not a flight risk because he's never not shown up to court before, if that's his record. And he's got a bunch of ties to the community. His cousin is in office somewhere, I believe, and his family's got a lot of financial resources. And so they'll be here and they're vouching for him. And so post a big bond and that can secure his appearance. These are just gun charges and forgery charges, fraud charges with a fake ID. You can release him pending charges in New York, which are coming soon, which we'll talk about very soon. So both of these issues are pending, and we're not actually going to see anything on this one as it stands until the 30th of December. And meanwhile, he'll remain in custody there unless New York comes in and seizes him, takes him. Now that is happening as we are recording this. We saw prosecutors in New York City are presenting evidence in the murder case to the grand jury. And so remember, there's already been charges filed via a complaint. And so there's two ways that we see people get charged with crimes. One is via a direct complaint, right? Prosecutors or an FBI special agent will fill out a form. Law enforcement or detectives will fill out a document, an affidavit, and say, I believe there's probable cause to charge this person with a crime. Prosecutor reviews it, they swear it in, and the judge accepts those new charges in court, right? Those charges are filed, they issue a warrant, whatever. That's one way. Now that's relying on just a couple people. That's relying on a detective and a prosecutor. So the case can be strong, but it also can be weak because you might be able to challenge that at a preliminary hearing and contest that narrative. So by contrast, you may want to increase the strength of the case by actually indicting the person, because then you have now presented that evidence to a grand jury, and the grand jury makes that probable cause determination, and you don't have to have a hearing wherein you can challenge the cop's statements and the other investigators' narrative, right? The grand jury has made the determination, now you're indicted. So that's happening right now. And it's not uncommon in major cases like this for both things to be happening in parallel. You file the complaint so you can hold him in custody, start the extradition process, and then hit him with the actual indictment. So the suspect in the shooting now is fighting extradition from Pennsylvania, but sources are telling ABC News that prosecutors at the Manhattan DA's office, that's Bragg. And by the way, this DA's office is corrupt. It's New York. It's Alvin Bragg. It's Tish James. It's Matthew Colangelo. It's these people like the two prosecutors who resigned through temper tantrums, Carrie Dunn and Mark Pomerantz. They tell ABC News that they have started presenting evidence to a grand jury. An indictment can strengthen the case for extradition. Manhattan attorney Alvin Bragg would not discuss the evidence in detail, but he did express confidence in the case that he is building. He says this is obviously a profoundly disturbing, as we've alleged murder. We would not charge the person if we didn't think it was the person, and we're prepared to go forward. You have a bad history of doing that. You charge President Trump with perjurers and porn stars, which could be like a Netflix series or something. But then you also charge Daniel Penny, and you tried to rig the outcome in that case. So you have a bad history of being accurate in your prosecutions. So Governor Kathy Hochul said she expects an extradition warrant will be issued any day now, which she will sign the second that happens. And then she'll work with Josh Shapiro to get Mangione extradited in New York as quickly as possible. And that will happen like lickety-split. I want to get him here in the state of New York and run him through our criminal justice system, because that horrific attack occurred on our streets. And the people of our city deserve that sense of calm that this perpetrator has been caught and will never see the light of day if there is justice. You cannot assassinate an individual on the streets of New York. Not now, not ever. He's remaining locked up in Pennsylvania. Judge denied bail on Tuesday. We know how he was apprehended. They've got more evidence. They say fingerprints have been lifted from the water bottle and a granola bar wrapper found in Midtown. So now we're saying, what connects him to the actual scene? It was the same ID that was used at the hostel. You have the photographs. Now DNA evidence. Police say they match prints taken from Mangione after his arrest in Altoona. Additionally, the NYPD say ballistics from the firearm that he was carrying match 3 shell casings that were recovered from the crime scene. So he had the weapon that was used. Authorities also say Mangione was also carrying writings linking him to the slaying. In Pennsylvania, Mangione faces charges, including allegedly possessing an untraceable, they call ghost gun. In New York, he faces charges including second-degree murder. When asking Bragg about why Mangione is facing a charge of second-degree murder, this question came up here, and we looked it up. It appears to be a quirk in the way the statute is written, right? In New York, first-degree murder is like murder plus. It's like premeditated murder plus. And it's reserved for just special categories. When babies die, cops die, serial killers murder multiple people. And so you got to be a protected class in order for it to be murder plus. And so all of the evidence, man, is pouring in. Stacks of evidence. This case should be cut and dry, obviously. It's like DNA, guns, writings, eyewitnesses that's clearly him, and eyebrows and everything. They got it. Says the fingerprints were there, shell casings were there, recovered from a water bottle and a Kind bar near the crime scene. The Kind bar and the water bottle were not blown away by a leaf blower guy, unlike the leaves. Here's an image of the firearm that was there. 26-year-old, written on the shell casings, as we saw, deny, defend, depose. And another woman just got arrested for repeating that phrase on a phone call with her insurance provider. Not a good thing to do. The writing said, using explosives in the attack could risk innocence, they said. Now, detectives are still examining his writings, but they're considering the contents of the notebooks to represent a confession. Incredible. Incredible. Why did this guy even run? Should have just walked to the police department. So we got multiple DNA, we got ballistics, the actual gun, we've got a written confession, and it's done. It's over. Do we even need a trial? Huh? Investigators have started, I'm being facetious, interviewing members of the Mangione family, according to sources. A judge in Pennsylvania ordered Mangione held without bail. In Pennsylvania, he faces charges for the firearm. Mangione plans to challenge his extradition. He has constitutional rights, said his attorney, and he's taken it as well as he can. The Manhattan DA's office says they're going to pursue an extradition warrant. His attorney told ABC News Good Morning on Wednesday that anyone speculating on the case should take the potential evidence, quote, in its entirety, and not taking pieces of writing or other evidence, quote, out of context. He says people put out certain things, parts of different things. I think any lawyer involved in the situation would want to see it all. And of course, pleading not guilty to all the charges. Now, I did pull this out from the Pennsylvania docket, just so we can get a vibe for what it looks like and what's happening. This comes over from the criminal docket. The arrest date was 12/9. This is the preliminary arraignment that we saw took place on the 9th. Started that night, 6:30 p.m. in front of Judge Benjamin Jones. Then we've got, it looks like another preliminary hearing they had scheduled, but I feel like that may have just moved to the 30th for their preliminary hearing. Actually, they may keep that preliminary hearing there, but I think that what they did is they just scheduled the bond and the petition hearing for the 30th. So we might have actually two hearings now that I think about it. A preliminary hearing, which might get postponed, but we have another 12/30 date that is now also on this case based on the order that we just saw that was entered on the 12th. So this may not have had that included yet. But we also see this is the defendant. He was advised of his right to counsel at the hearing. This is the update as of the last hearing. So public defender requested by the defendant, yes, but now he's hired private counsel. So this is right. This is older. And he applied for a public defender, but then somebody hired him a lawyer. All right. So I need to get a lawyer. Then somebody hired him one. So these are the charges there out of Pennsylvania: forgery, firearms not to be carried without a license, tampering with records, the false ID, possessions of instruments of a crime with intent, false ID to law enforcement, which these three are misdemeanors. Class 1s are probably higher in Pennsylvania. And then class 2 would be a higher level felony, I'm suspecting as well. That's where he's at. This is the docket entry stuff. Then the lawyer came in, Dickey Law Offices. So that was private. So he entered his appearance there. And then, of course, the prosecutors listed over there. So the case is progressing. United Healthcare CEO, grand jury's hearing expert also being reported. We saw that from CBS. Gun, fingerprints, linking him. New York Police Commissioner Tisch said investigators matched the gun to his back that he had in his backpack, said fingerprints were also on a water bottle and an energy bar wrapper. Gunman stopped at Starbucks, used cash to buy a water bottle and protein bars. Those items were recovered and analyzed. They said we're fighting extradition, so we'll see where it goes. Now, we could see an indictment any minute. So New York today could come through with something. It's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence, are what his writings say. Doesn't want to use bombs and wants to launch an attack at the annual Parasitic Bean Counter Convention. And I've also seen other reports. He didn't even have health insurance through United Healthcare. Strange case. It's always amazing when all of the evidence just lands right in front of them like a Christmas present, right down a tree. And Kris Kringle from McDonald's jumps down the chimney, calls it in, and poof, it's a Christmas miracle. Amazing. We'll, of course, keep our eye on it.